Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're talking about auto-classifying the 3 R's, ROT, records, and retention. Again, my name is Jen Nelson. I am the VP Strategic Solutions at Valora Technologies, and joining me is Sandy, our co-founder and CEO at Valora. If you are new to our webinar series, we hold a webinar about every 6 weeks, and we will continue to do so into 2026. So if you have missed any of these topics, I encourage you to go onto our website at valoratech.com and navigate to webinars and events, and you'll see all of the webinars that we've done previously. And I would also, so next month, we have a webinar called Getting Ready for Auto-Classification. And I'll just point that out because it's a great time for that webinar as people are starting to plan for 2026 and into 2027. It's all about building your use case, your needs assessment, your risk assessment for data, building your team and your stakeholders who you're going to bring around auto-classification projects, building your budget and how to realize ROI, and then building that kind of rollout plan. So we're going to go soup to nuts on that Getting Ready for Auto-Classification webinar. So I would encourage you to register for that if you're interested. Oh, and my little thought bubble here of we are going to be at ARMA InfoCon next month. So I would encourage you to come and check us out. Sandy is speaking, I think, on the Tuesday, I want to say, specifically about structured data environments and applying AI and auto-classification in structured data. So that would be a great session to attend. And also we'd love to grab a drink or a visit or a lunch or whatever. So if we don't hunt you down, please feel free to hunt us down. And we'd love to meet up next month. So a little bit about us, if you are new here, we are 25 years in business this year. We offer an information governance platform that leverages AI, auto-classification technology, and machine learning algorithms to help automate the discovery, the classification, the disposition of content, regardless of where it lives across the enterprise, and mostly used by data governance teams, IG teams, IM teams to help defensively govern their data, again, through this kind of single pane of glass view wherever it lives. Not only do we kind of help bring the different repositories together, but we also help with aligning multiple use cases. Because in the past, information governance used to be synonymous with records management. It was like find the record, keep the record for the appropriate time, dispose of said record. But we know that all content we create, not only corporate records, have their own life cycle and need to be managed and handled appropriately to account for things like legal hold and privacy compliance and AI readiness and things like that. So that's where we fit. So that's a little bit about us. A little bit about you. Thank you for being here again. We ask you when you register, who are you? And what are your challenges that you're facing in your practice? So you're in good company today around the table. We've got lots of records and information management folks. Interesting that there's usually multiple practices when people come in and they, what do you mainly do? Usually it's one, but we're finding more and more it's records and knowledge management or records and compliance and legal. So it's really interesting to see how that kind of traditional, records manager or information governance practice has grown, and more people are taking on those extra bits. So welcome to everybody who you are, and what were your RIM challenges and IG challenges. You're in good company. Again, today we're looking at file and ROT reduction, we're looking at records, we're looking at retention. So the top 3 things were ROT reduction, automating manual processes, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today, and then of course the favorite, OMG, everything. So again, hope you're in good company today, and welcome. Some housekeeping before we actually are going to dive in. So there is a Q&A and a chat that, again, I cannot see, but Sandy can see, and she will be looking at. So please feel free to put your questions in, put comments in, and we will, as they come in, if Sandy sees them, we'll stop. But if not, we will save them to the end. But we'd love to engage and let us know if you've got questions as we go. The slide presentation and the recording will be sent to you over email probably tomorrow morning. And that little fourth one with feedback, we would love your feedback. If there's something that you'd like to see or you'd like to see us talk about, or maybe a practice area that we haven't talked about this year, please let us know, because we would love to include that in our 2026 webinar series. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Yes, we were talking about the 3 R's. So we're going to have a bit of an overview of Auto Classification 101, so we're all on the same page. What is it and how it works? And then Auto Classifying ROT, Auto Classifying Records, and then Auto Classifying Retention. And we're going to end it with putting it all together, like a cohesive lifestyle management. That's another webinar. Life cycle management. And then how to get
IG
started.
is a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about today. We have so much stuff here. So we're probably going to go the full hour, and we've got a lot of stuff to get through. So stop talking about the intro and let's get into it. Okay, let's talk about auto classification and classification.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in. We don't like to assume that everybody knows what we're talking about, so we start at the beginning, but we go very quickly through things. So in case for some reason you're not familiar with this concept of classification, it is basically creating a set of tags, metadata tags, about a file that tell us interesting things or things we need to know about that file. So hopefully we don't have to sit there and read all 50 million files that our organization holds. We're going to have the software kind of do the work for us and create tags called metadata. That's often called enriched or rich metadata beyond the file metadata that just the operating system creates. And this is a slide I've used many times if you've heard me speak before. Metadata is the love note to the future. And what I used to mean by that is from you, yesterday to you tomorrow, or to your colleagues tomorrow, because taking the time to bother to get metadata about information just pays back 100-fold in the future whenever you're trying to search or retrieve something or create a litigation production or carry out a records disposal, whatever it is that you're trying to do in the future. It's really helpful if you had applied metadata in the past. But now we have a new love note to the future, and that's the love note to AI. To say, hey, AI, we took the time to curate everything and set you up for success so that you're not hallucinating or working with bad data or creating garbage. Use the metadata that we created in good faith, go forth and multiply.
Now, with classification, of course, you can classify manually. If you have, time to classify 100 petabytes, you go right ahead. But honestly, is that the best use of your time, and will you stay sane while doing that? The volume of data that we are creating, it is impossible to keep up with the volume that we're creating. So with auto classification, you can automate that. So, but somebody says, well, why not humans? I was chatting with somebody last week that was, their CIO was like, awesome. How many people do you need? And they were like, I don't need people. I don't want people. And why do we not want humans classifying? Because of course, human error in interpretations. I call it a tomato. Sandy calls it a tomato. And the scalability issues are insane. Just think of how many, emails in your inbox you have yet to sort of classify yourself, let alone, your 5,000 colleagues. Relying on humans is also a compliance risk because there's no way to audit that thought process from a human. And with that limited auditability, we have no transparency. We don't know why things were categorized that way. Where on the other hand, if we're relying on auto classification technology or the robots to do it, they are always consistent. They never kind of just say, oh, well, it was Tuesday and I was in a bad mood and I decided it was this. It's consistent. It's very easy to scale because the more data you have, the more robots you're going to throw at it. It reduces risk because it is auditable. It is defensible. Every decision, every action is traced and trackable. So you know kind of where things came. But when we're talking about speed, we're like, okay, but how fast? How fast is fast? And if you were a human, you could average maybe 10 seconds to classify a document. So in a day, if you took a break for lunch, you could get through 2,500 files a day. When we rely on technology to do that, scaling to 100 million files a day. And if you were actually interested in the math on that, because I have people say, but actually, how much time and how much money? The math is here for you. For a human to classify a terabyte of data, which is about 2.5 million documents, it would take just under 4 employee years for one person to get through a terabyte. And on average, folks have like kind of this unknown data set of about 20 terabytes, so 50 million documents. So we're going to ask Joe, who doesn't know anything about our data, and it's going to take him literally 80 years to go in and classify that. But Jen, we wouldn't hire just one person. We would hire a team of 50 people. Well, you could absolutely do that as well. And 50 people could get through 30 million documents in a year. And this is what it would cost you if you employed them in the US or if you decided to hire an overseas team. So the math don't lie. And it is time and it is real money. And when you're investing in an auto classification tool, you're not only reducing the volume of data by reducing getting rid of stuff you don't need, but you're reducing cost as well. Cost, risk, and time. So what is auto classification and how does it work in 40 seconds or less? It is machines. It is the algorithms doing and making the decisions for us. So it is the software that it's performing, and it's not going to ask the humans, what do I do with this? It's going to answer for each piece of individual information it looks at. What is this thing? What do I do with it? How long do I keep it? Where do I store it? Whatever. And then does what it's supposed to do. So as it goes through and it does its classification, the file attributes that it finds becomes that rich metadata. So when it's scanning a document, often you will see the system generated metadata in that little gray box is last modified, created date, whatever, tells us nothing about the contents of the file. So what we're going to do is open that up and start pulling out the information that matters. Doesn't matter when it was last accessed, but if it's a contract, it matters, you know, what's the effective date, what's the signature date, what's the expiration date, what's the renewal date. So we're going to pull out those different kind of elements of metadata, and that's going to, or the attributes that become that metadata. And then it's going to go through and apply its recognition algorithm. So as it's pulling things out, it's like, yeah, this is a service agreement, or, oh, yeah, this is a termination letter. So it's going to determine what doc type as defined by the organization's records retentions policies or schedules. And then it's going to apply the disposition algorithms to say, okay, well, if it's an employment contract, and it's sitting out somewhere in willy-nilly file share, mark it as confidential, move it to, SharePoint, HR's SharePoint area, retain it for 8 years after termination. And before we get rid of that record, we need HR's approval. So it's going to log all that, and it's going to look at that event to say, but the event hasn't even happened yet. It's an employment contract. The termination date hasn't even been thought of yet. So, but it's going to look for it, and it's going to be present and aware that when that event triggers of termination eventually, what are all the things that need to happen about that? So that's the defensible disposition part. And when we talk about disposition in kind of the paper record sense of destroy, it could be anything when we're talking about electronic records. So we could tag it, we could move it, we could delete it, we could migrate it, we can redact it, we can anonymize it, we can hold it. Whatever we need to do with it, we can rely on the system to do it for us in a reliable way. So is auto classification AI? Do you want me to take this, India?
I'm happy to take it.
Okay.
So, we get asked this a lot, and the answer is, at the end of the day, yes, auto classification is a type of AI, but it's important to understand that there's different types of AI. It's not all one big broad brush stroke. So the upper two boxes here, machine learning and extractive AI, are older forms of AI. Really, they've been around since like the 1960s. And the one that we use at Valora, that's in kind of the major player in auto classification, is machine learning. And that is essentially using statistical pattern matching to say, what does this sequence of words suggest? So for people of a certain age on this call, if you encounter a phrase like, if this transmission was received in error, please call, we all know, we remember, though, that's an indicator of a fax cover sheet. Remember those? And that is kind of how machine learning works. It's looking for pattern recognition and then scoring the match against the known qualities that it's trying to compare to. Extractive AI, very similar, is going into documents and pulling out information. This is the author because it's under the line that says yours sincerely, comma, and then there's a name and a title, right? So those two techniques are very defensible. They are rules-based. You can see exactly what the software is doing and you can follow its scoring rubric. And so those two are highly defensible. The bottom two, generative and agentic AI, those are the new ones. Generative AI is ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. That's getting all the buzz right now. And it's also getting all the kind of the hand wringing because of the ability to hallucinate or invent things that weren't there. Generally, auto classification is not in that realm yet, and that's on purpose because of the high stakes involved in classifying enterprise data. We want to stay in that defensible territory in the orange box here. Is Valora exploring different techniques for generative AI and agentic AI? Yes, we are. But right now we're taking a very cautious path because we have to work around the hallucinating aspects of generative AI. I'm thinking we need a whole other webinar on AI, Jen.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming up in 2026.
Right.
Yeah. So what does it look like when you're auto-classifying documents? This is an example of what you'd see in a file share, and you'd say, oh, LGPIF final, of course it is. So what the heck does that mean? So we're going to open it and we're going to read it. The software is going to read it and it's going to start to pull out that information. So this document type, it's a pharmaceutical. This is an informed consent form. It's going to pull out the drug name. It's going to pull out the testing and the trial information. It's going to pull out the people involved. Who's the researcher? Who's the patient or the participant? It's going to pull out dates and it's going to normalize those dates because the way we date things in Canada is the way that we date things differently in the US, which kills me to this day. How many years have I been in business? Can't wrap my head around it.
I don't know what you're going on about. Hey,
that's about the so the system is going to tell us this is a consent form. The record class based on the records retention schedule is clinical trial. This is how long we keep it. This is how we handle sensitivity. When it's ready for deletion, we need to get authorization. Is this eligible for AI training? No, because it's got personal data in it. Maybe that's a reasoning. So keep it till December 14th, 2031, which does not sound like a real year, but apparently it is. And we're going to keep that until then and then dispose of it. So that's how you would that's how auto classification would work when auto classifying a document. On the flip side, when you're auto classifying structured data, if you are going to belch out structured data, you're usually going to end it in a CSV or some kind of form that is extremely difficult for humans to interact with. So when we auto-classify structured data, we're going to record data in its own entity. And the way that we can interact with that then as humans with an auto classification tool is to bring all that together into a mockument. So a mockument is just like it sounds. It is a mock document that we as humans can now interact with, and it's going to pull all that record data into a mockument that we can easily interact with and apply retention disposition just like we would the actual database record.
This
and
is
then at
what
the
I'm
enterprise
talking about at InfoCon, is that whole process, how it works, how to do it, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the enterprise level, take what we just saw there and compound it by however many terabytes and systems that you have. Because everyone, it's not just the folks around the table here in the iGEM, the IG or IM or RM teams, but everyone is asking, whether it's compliance, legal, IT, like, what do we even have? Like, what do we have? Where is it? Who has access? What is under some kind of regulatory compliance, be it data privacy or be it health with HIPAA? And what policies do we apply? So the ability to see into all of these different repositories, to do a data discovery, like lay of the land, what do we have? Where is it? The ability to perform that intelligent analysis, and the ability to auto-classify based on what each piece of content is. Or, even if piece of content is too overwhelming because you're talking about like hundreds of petabytes, we can go folder level, we can go levels up. Like, it sometimes thinking about each document is overwhelming, but we can take that up as far as we need to. And then that defensible disposition, again, regardless of where it is or what it needs to do, we can take it and move it, take it and redact it, take it and, dispose of it. And then we do it all over again. Each day we are creating new data in all of these systems. So the ability to go back and look for anything that is new or been edited means that you will eventually approach a near real-time state of being throughout all of your enterprise data. And the great thing about using an auto classification tool is that it brings all that up into a single pane of glass. So now you're able to view and see and manage and act on your data regardless of where it lives. And I would say the six.
Just to pick up on something you said there, I think a lot of times people who are new to auto classification or new to the concept of using this for records management purposes, just so people understand, it's not a lot of effort to open up a file and kind of parse through it. The software is doing that. It takes about 5 seconds to access the file, log it, open it, read it, close it, step away. And that's about the same amount of time. If you've ever worked with a chat GPT or something like that, and you've asked it a question, it says thinking of the answer and comes back, it's about the same amount of time as that. So sometimes people don't realize that it's pretty pain-free to go through and actually be able to understand and interpret your enterprise content at what we call the body text level of the files. It used to be that was just too overwhelming a processing effort. And with the processing power available today, it's just not. And it's kind of game changing. I liken it to being sort of not being able to see to being able to see. Suddenly, you know everything there is to know about your content. It's just sort of a game-changing capability.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I'll end kind of this auto classification piece on how most organizations are using auto classification technology now in their data environments. So these are kind of the top 6. Data discovery and classification, like what do I have, where is it, how is it managed, who has access, rot and file cleanup to be able to find it and actually get rid of it, records management, which we'll talk about later again, and data privacy and other risk compliance, legal hold and e-discovery, and certainly AI readiness to identify what content should and should not be used in AI training. So that's kind of our auto classification 101. And look at us, we've got 35 minutes left to do the rest. So we will absolutely, we're game. So let's talk about auto classifying rot.
Okay, so presumably most of you know this acronym for redundant, obsolete, trivial, the polite way of saying the crap that exists in your organization. But basically, this is just the stuff that you have that's sort of the detritus of day-to-day operations, a lot of it being duplicative in nature. Most organizations have around 50% duplicative, identical duplicate content that they are storing, having to be responsible for, serves as an attack vector, serves as open game for litigation, and on and on and on. We have also recently started to add a fourth acronym into ROT. So sometimes calling it ROTI or Riot or IROT, whatever you want. But yet another class in here, which is inappropriate, and that was my attempt at a bikini there. The idea being that there is content, I guarantee it, I will bet any of you $100 that this exists in your organization. It's the kind of information that is either, let's say, off color, offensive, kind of violating your DEI policies, or it's information that you have that you really shouldn't. So that's what I mean by ill-gotten. Maybe you collected data in an era where consent wasn't part of the program or part of the technique in which you gathered data, and you're still holding that data in an age of consent. That's not okay. Or you're using you gathered data for one purpose, but you're kind of bending the rules and you're using it for another purpose. I'll give an example from real world client situation. We were analyzing a client's data estate, and we came across several dozen bootleg copies of Rolling Stones concerts being stored on the enterprise servers. Of course they were. That is what I mean by ill-gotten. Nobody knew that was there. Nobody knew who put it there, but yet it was there and represented a liability to the organization. This is essentially illegal content. That's a great example of inappropriate content that should be identified and removed. So the first thing that you might want to do when you're considering auto classification is hunting down the rot. It's probably 50% or more of your content. It is the single biggest bang for the buck in terms of ROI, not ROT, ROI on this type of technology. So if you're looking to justify, here you go. What's the risk in keeping it? What's the risk in exposure or an attack vector? And what is the cost just in terms of storage to hold twice as much data in AWS or Azure or wherever you're keeping it than you need to keep? Go ahead, Jen. Mm-hmm. So one thing we'll talk about is there are different levels of duplicates. As long as we're going to talk about rot, we're going to talk about redundant. Let's talk about different kinds of redundancy. So what most people mean when they're talking about redundant content is they mean exact duplicate, forensically identical, hash match files, literal clones. So if I send out a Happy New Year email to everybody in your organization, all 20,000 people are going to have an identical email or file from me. Those are exact duplicates, and people make them all day long, accidentally, on purpose. They're keeping sort of black market copies of data where they shouldn't be keeping it. Even when we kind of lift data from one area and bring it to the next area, but we kind of still keep the old one live. This is how it happens. So that's the first category, is identical dupes. Then we have a second category called functional dupes. And functional dupes are, for all intents and purposes, they look and feel identical, but they don't hash match. If you're not familiar with hashing, hashing is just an algorithm that basically creates a digital fingerprint for a document, and either the fingerprint matches, identical match, or it doesn't. So if I take a Word doc and I save it as a PDF, it looks and feels the same, content's the same, pictures the same, author's the same, but the hash will be different because Word and Adobe make different hashes, so they're not going to match. That is a great example of a functional dupe. And then we have near dupes. Near dupes is yet another level down where the content is similar, but definitely not identical. So you can think of that as a version, let's say, of a contract or a letter that I'm writing. It might be, if I send out a form letter to all our 20,000 customers, the only thing that changes in the form letter is the recipient address and name. Otherwise, the rest of the content is identical. Great example of a near dupe. Chances are, however I want to treat the life cycle of the first letter of those 20,000 is how I want to treat the other 19,999. So I want to be able to identify them all and batch them together based on their similarity. That's what near dupes are.
Mhm.
So how do you auto-classify rot? Here's a perfect example. A well-meaning employee sent out an email to everyone in the company in the eve of 2014, back in the day when we thought that was quaint, and sent out a, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, love you all. Maybe they were drunk, who knows? Okay. Meanwhile, this is sitting in everybody's inbox, right? There's 4,000 literal identical copies, hash match copies, and taking up space in your servers and building rot in your organization. So software comes along, does that analysis that you showed you and says, yeah, this is rot. And so now you come back to your dashboard. This is one of the 10,000 pieces of rot. And then this is what our Black Hat interface is showing the bird's eye view. Show me everything you know about whatever data subset in question. It could be the entire enterprise estate. It could just be Sandy's outbox. It could be the marketing server, whatever it is. Show me the lay of the land. And you can always go up and down as wide as you want or as narrow as you want about the rot. Is it rot? Yes, no. If so, what type? Is it redundant, obsolete, trivial? Is it redundant? How is it redundant? Oh, it's an identical dupe. Is it obsolete? It's obsolete because it's past retention by 27 days, 27 years, whatever it is. Okay, that was rot. Let's get into slightly harder. Let's get into records. So I personally find it helpful to think of retention as a spectrum. So you have some stuff, you're on the one edge, you have stuff you should get rid of on site, rot. Get rid of your junk as soon as you encounter it. It kills me when I see rot that's 25 years old in organizations. That should be removed promptly. At the other end of the spectrum, we have things that are permanent records. We all know what they are. They're in their special preservica or whatever the heck they're in to keep them forever. Those are pretty well understood. Now we get into what I call the squishy middle, which is the stuff that's transient for some reason or another. We have things that need to be removed on demand. A DSAR comes in. If you're not familiar, data subject access request. It's a data privacy request of somebody, a data subject, a person saying, I would like you to forget about me, please. I'm no longer your customer. Stop tracking me. Okay, that's a remove on demand. We also have a keep on demand. That's the legal hold. Oh, now suing the company. Everything related to her has to be under legal hold, which hopefully you all will remember to lift when that matter finishes or settles. Do not leave things on legal hold forever, but it certainly happens. I know it happens. So that is kind of, almost sort of become permanent or become long-term, keep on demand. And then we have the middle, which is active files. What do we do with these? Do we remove them? Do we keep them? And the answer is they should be classified into either a record type or some other type and have life cycle applied to them, preferably at moment of origin or acquisition, not 25 years later after they came into existence.
Mm-hmm.
So this gets us to this whole notion of what we call kind of top-down versus bottom-up records retention. Historically, we've been doing top-down, and this is what we mean by that. We come out with a records retention schedule. We come out with a records handling policy. We force it onto every employee and say, either thou shalt do this or please do this, and kind of expect, 20,000 individuals to do what we're asking them to do. And that's not been going great. The alternative technique, and this is the one that Valora is advocating, is to go bottom up, which is to go from the content, let the content speak. What am I? What kind of document am I? Where did I come from? Who wrote me? How am I being used? And have that dictate the life cycle and the parameters around this document's usage. There's so much more context, there's so much more information, and most importantly, it takes the burden off of your fellow colleagues. It's being centralized and consistent because it's being done by software. And Jen, it looks like we have a question.
Oh, fantastic.
So let me jump. No, I don't. My Q&A came up. Oh, yes, here we go. It's a comment from Sherry Becker. Thank you, Sherry. It says you will need to train the tool which record series that document type applies to. Contracts are one, retention, GXP have a longer retention. Absolutely. How does the tool determine that? And that's right. There is an element of training here, and there are different techniques for training. I will tell you the one that we use at Valora. So typically, the method that we use is that we actually have a template for all different types of document types. In other words, we have a library of already recognized document types. And we've been doing this, as Jen said, for 25 years. So there are millions of doc types in there. So like she gave the example of an informed consent form. We have 25 different flavors of informed consent forms so that when we come across the next one, we're like, oh, yeah, we know what that is, or it's close enough to one of these. In the circumstance where we come across a doc type that doesn't score well or doesn't match with high confidence to any of the existing doc type templates, that gets flagged. And that's one that says, hey, I got low confidence across the board. This is some new kind of doc type. We need to have a chat. And that's when we go in and we take a look at that, where we contact the client and say, what is this? And that's where we learn. And yes, there's a little bit of a human exchange that goes on there. It's probably some new doc type we haven't seen before. We build a template for it, either explicit for the customer or as a generic for future use evermore. And then that enters sort of the lexicon there on out. So that's kind of how the training takes place at Valora. It is not the only technique. There are others, but that's the one that we have found to be most reliable. So hopefully, Sherry, I answered that. If not, we can certainly come back to it at the end. The way that we kind of add the life cycle onto each piece of content, onto each document, is via the interpretation of your records retention schedule. So you have data in all of these different places across your enterprise and well beyond. And then you have a records retention schedule that is ideally meant to govern all those different flavors of data. So what happens is that each of those record classes becomes a rule inside Valora's powerhouse system. Those rules are configurable, those rules are editable, they are hierarchical, they can be scored. So it's this, unless it comes from that group, unless it's Tuesday, unless it's raining. You can get as gnarly as you want in your classification schema. And then the scoring of the document against that comes out with a score that says, yes, there's a high confidence that it's this classification, therefore it has this kind of retention, it has this kind of approval, it has this kind of disposition handling at the end, so on and so forth. And that's what goes into Black Cat. That's the UI on the bottom of the page that says for every document, you can then kind of do the pivot table. You can look at it per document or per box or per file, folder, whatever, that says what is the treatment in here. Or you can go the other direction, which is show me everything related to Jen, departing employee, and what needs to happen with that. So you can look at it kind of either direction. So, I mean, obviously there are lots of use cases around, kind of RIM use cases, but basically this is kind of showing a sequence of, I would say, sophistication from simplest to most complex. So the simplest would be just identify and tag your metadata so that you know what you have. If you want, you could step away there, you could use those tags, and you could manually disposition whenever the spirit moved you to do so. The second category would be to set up automated disposition. Every 90 days, go and look at everything that's met the retention criteria and is not under legal hold and has automatic approval, whatever your conditions are, and go ahead and set that up so that it is happening automatically. You don't have to sit there and push the okay button over and over. And then the third one, which would be kind of an advanced approach, which would be to have it automated, but to be aware of all the other things that are happening in the company, like connecting in with your legal hold system. So knowing when you good folks, you lifted that legal hold when the matter was over, knowing that now all that past retention stuff that was under legal hold is now eligible for disposition, or for integrating with other groups. Oh, we're integrated with your ERP system. We know who was terminated at this last time frame, so we know that the trigger has hit for the following 10,000 employees, whatever. That's the more advanced technique. We handle all three at Valora, and if you need to step from easiest to hardest, that is okay too.
And there's always a question about, always a question about, but what about all my paper? Because I got like a warehouse full of stuff. So we can look for and account for boxes and paper boxes in Black Cat when we are auto classifying. Most likely you are in an Iron Mountain or an Access or whatever, and you have that dashboard and that interface where you can see your boxes, and maybe you know what's in that box. So this is kind of where documents come into play again, where we can take that information from Iron Mountain and create a document for each box so that you can see all my stuff about the box on the left, everything that's in my box on the right, and you're able to see that, interact with it, and treat it, I'll say, like an electronic record, although we know it's not. But we can still see it and interact with it and apply disposition and manage it like we would an electronic file. And we can do that. And we can, again, bring that up and be able to see that in our dashboard. And some dashboard items when we're looking for auto classifying records is the ability to see document type and record class and retention schedules and retention holding, and again, what's rot, what's past, what's obsolete because it's past retention, and being able to visually and then physically interact with all of this data regardless of where it lives. Now we're going to talk about retention.
Okay, that's back to me. So one of the things that we have done is kind of split the notion of retention into the date component. When does this become obsolete? And the handling of that. Some people just say disposition, and what they mean is on the date, go ahead and delete the thing. But we have separated those out because when you're using an automated solution, you want to be very, very clear. And those two levers may not go in tandem. So the date is one thing, and then what happens on that date is another. So it's helpful to think of these as separate. Obviously, they're affiliated, but they're tracked separately. And then when you use the disposition rules, you combine the elements of the two pieces. Go ahead, Jen. So what you get at the end, again, that we're looking at Black Hat again here, is you have this notion of what is the retention period that's coming from the records retention schedule itself, and of course the classification of the document type or the record class. So that one's sort of a given based on the nature of the file. Then the date is a calculation, right, based on whichever date is the trigger point for calculating. And then there's that expiration handling, and there's many choices there. They can be automatic deletion for, let's say, low value stuff like duplicates, or auto reply emails, things like that. We have all different kinds of classes of stuff that you might want to automatically delete. You can have putting things out for first level authorization, second level authorization. You can have this notion of graduated. So wait 30 days. If no one responds, then, go give them a 60-day, give them a 30-day warning, whatever. You can kind of escalate your expiration handling. And then there's the things that, of course, are under permanent hold. Their expiration handling is they don't got none because they shall never expire. And you have everything from expire immediately as soon as encountered to never. Again, that spectrum. This is sort of what it looks like. Well, Jen flashed it up there inside our software, if you want to see it, you can have it in the graphical view or in the tabular view. Have a ball.
And when it comes to the actual disposition or the actioning of that content, there's 3 options that folks have. With an auto classification tool like Valora, it can be fully automated. So it's like, yeah, that's wrong, that's out, that's old, that's whatever, get rid of it. And it's the software agents that are taking those actions. In full transparency, most clients' IT teams are like, well, yeah, well, let's baby step into that. So another option is for the client's IT team to take that action. So everything that is up for disposition, or we need to move it out of file shares into HR, we need to mark it as confidential. Sometimes the client's IT team wants to take that step because they have their own processes and tracks and audits and things like that. So the client's IT team can accept those reports and make that change out into the world. And then the third one is client employee self-service. So we know people are insane about their data. So especially when we're doing a ROT project or cleanup, if you went into Sandy's OneDrive and just axed everything that was obsolete, or what you considered obsolete, or what your records retention schedule considered obsolete, she'd have a bird. So being able to bring people through that process and have employees involved in it, if you so choose. And they don't have to have access to any kind of system. They can just be kind of given a report to say, you know, Sandy, this is everything in your drive that is redundant, obsolete, or trivial, and this is why. And our policy states that yada, 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 yada. So you can help people through that process because, again, people are crazy about their data. So how do we put it all together to build this cohesive life cycle, not lifestyle, management program? How to stand up your auto classification for records in 10 easy steps.
You want me to take that one?
Do it.
So
yeah.
basically, our next webinar, which is next month, is about basically getting ready for auto classification. So this is a little bit of a distillation of that conversation. So, you know, if this slide speaks to you, definitely come next month. But basically, what you need to kind of get started is some sort of profile or policy about the way you expect to treat your data in your organization. So you're going to need either a records retention schedule or citations about how you're supposed to handle data in your industry or in your country or in your organization. Strongly recommend you have some executive support to do this because it's going to require IT interaction. It's going to require budget. It's going to require, you know, setting permissions and access to outside third parties and software. So this isn't just something you just kind of try on a lark. You know, you undertaking auto classification of your data estate, it is a big effort. So you're going to want to make sure you have that support in a lot of different ways. You're also going to need just to make peace with the idea that this is not a one and done. It's always difficult when people think information governance is like a project that they're going to do for a couple months and then they'll be done. That's really not true. And so we would sort of caution people to think about this as good, healthy living. It's something you're going to do forever. So have that mindset going in. Now, what are you going to get from undertaking this? You're going to have a beautiful live data inventory or data map. Where is all our data? Which of it is sensitive? What is past retention? What's under legal hold? All of that will be literally at your fingertips and will be live and updated every second. So you no longer have a data map from 18 months ago that's basically irrelevant. You have a live dashboard of the current situation. You'll have established tagging and retention criteria and auditing of the same. You'll essentially have proof that you are living your policies. Mm-hmm. You'll have, of course, a baseline tag for everything in your organization, so you will know what you have. And if you're acting upon this data, you will either be in the process of or have already gotten rid of all of that rot, and you will be able to continue to do so as it is created. Again, that's the goal, is to get through the pile of stuff that's accumulated so far so that you're live managing your data in real time.
Awesome. And just to give you an idea of some of the tags or the rich metadata that we can pull out from things, everything from, again, raw records and retention, but most clients are pulling between 60 and 80 different fields of metadata, not just about, again, raw records, retention, I'll say traditional records management, but also of content, location, shoe size, whatever you're looking for. We can pull that out with a number of tags, again, between 60 and 80 usually, but like, I'll say sky's the limit, but I don't want to say sky's the limit because you got to bring it back. But 60 to 80 is a great place. It's a great range to start. And if you are going to ask, what does Valora's product look like? So this is our auto classification platform is made up of three things. Powerhouse, we've talked about. Black Cat, that's where people kind of go in and look at this dashboard. And then connectors, so a way in and out of different systems. And we also offer, just think of the complexity of the back end that we've talked about that it's doing. We would never hand you over the keys and say, good luck. We do have an operational support team that manages and supports not only the technology and the infrastructure, but also your team. So you can think of it as an extension of your team. And the next question often from folks is, so where does everything live? Everything can live in your cloud so that everything stays behind your firewall. And the way things work is we will connect to those different systems, the source repositories with a transfer agent that will process everything in your cloud, but it's also going to take guidance data. So where's your most recent records retention schedule? Maybe integrate with your HRIS. Who's an active employee versus an inactive employee? Maybe integrate with your legal hold system. What's under legal hold, what holds have been lifted. So taking in that guidance data as a reference and then process everything in that cloud. And it's the output agent that writes that back to Black Cat so that we can see and interact with everything in Black Cat. But then again, it can also write that back to the source repository. So if there is a sensitive information, for an example, sitting in file share and we want to move that to SharePoint, we can in an automated way. But thinking about this in an IG and IM sense, of course, that's what we're talking about today. But because we're looking and knowing about what everything is, where it's sitting, who has access and whatnot, we can also inform other systems outside of, I'll say, traditional information governance, like data loss prevention software. What needs to be locked down or what needs to be protected? We can inform third-party systems about what that looks like. That's kind of a lay of the land about how everything would work in a real world environment. So with 5 minutes left, how do you even get started? Because you're sitting on, terabytes and terabytes of data. How do you even get started? And we'll talk about this next month as well when we talk about getting ready for auto classification. But a really great way is to get internal buy-in is to start with a pilot. You can start with either your most at-risk use case or your most use case that will prove that ROI quickly. But being able to show other groups who may be skeptical or you're fighting for budget and, show me this is going to work, starting with a pilot is a great idea because it'll give you that kind of tiny baby snapshot into the potential of what it could do. And when you're doing that pilot, and we'll start to kind of pull this out of you too, is always looking forward. So although maybe you're looking at a pilot with a very tiny data set, you're always thinking about where to next. What are we going to do? What are we going to add? Where are we going to go? What are you going to need by way of, reporting and access and things like that? And then the ability to measure results. You're not going to know it's working if you can't measure those results. So we'll work with you to really set those solid KPIs to say, what is this doing what you need it to do? are you seeing what you need to see? And is it managing data appropriately for what you need it to do? And then build on that success. So after that pilot, we've proved the ROI, we've proved that it works, and then we're going to build on that. We're going to expand into new repositories. We might expand into new groups. And quite often we've seen that if it's starting in the IG and the IM team, then legal's like, what are you guys doing over there? And IT's like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And data privacy and compliance is like, wait a second, so I can use this and see everything that I need to see. So it's a really great way to get other departments involved as well. And again, we'll talk about that next month, kind of finding your friends and finding your stakeholders in that group to make something like this a reality. The next question we usually are asked is, cool. So how long is that going to take? And the answer is it entirely depends. It depends on a lot of things. Depends on your data, depends on the complexity of your environment, depends on what you're looking to pull out and your goals and requirements. So to get a pilot up and running is usually about 12 weeks because we are building an entirely separate system for you. The streams will never cross, to use a Ghostbuster reference, in our environments. So we want to make sure that your environment is unique to you, and we set up something like that. So it's about 12 weeks to do a pilot, and then that phased implementation will help you work with that as well. So planning and setting those KPIs is so important. Again, the pilot and then ongoing implementation and that delta monitoring to always be looking for new content, looking for content that's been edited or changed or moved. So you, again, that kind of euphoric, goal state is to be in a near real-time view of your entire data estate, which sounds like, there's like, I can hear violins and harps playing in the background, but it is a reality. It is a possibility, and clients are doing it today. So that wraps up our webinar. Sandy, just between you and me, I cannot believe we did that in 60 minutes.
I'm very impressed with us.
We were like, dude, this is gonna go like a good 20 minutes over, but we did it, and we thank you so much for your time and for your attention. We know taking an hour out of your day sometimes is a challenge, but it's so great to see everybody who joined today. So I'll leave some time for questions. If there is any questions in the chat, we can get to that and answer them, or your time is now to enter them. But as we wait for that, I will direct you to our website so that you can, again, look at any of the past webinars. You can see that on our site. You can register for the ones that we were talking about coming up in October and November. And then also have a look out for our 2026 series as well. We'll be releasing that schedule probably when things slow down, probably January 1st.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in booking a demo or booking time, I'd encourage you to either hit us up here on our emails or go to the website, and you can book a demo and book your time right through the website as well. Sandy, is there any questions in the chat or the comments?
Nope, some lovely comments. Thank you, everyone, but no new questions.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you do have any after the webinar, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and you will receive an email with these slides and with the recording of the webinar in case you want to go back to it. So anyways, on behalf of Sandy and myself, thank you so much for attending today. And we will see you next month at ARMA InfoCon in Phoenix. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.